and sought after speaker at local, state, and national conferences. Ladies and gentlemen, now without further ado, please help me with a warm round of applause.
I haven't had dinner with this many people in the same room since I was last over at my Aunt Ethel's house. I want to say it's an honor for me to be here with Mike McNulty, a good friend and a former colleague of mine. Congressman McNulty, thank you so much for being here. But how about that Sherry? All I know is no wonder she's the head of this organization, because she keeps everybody moving. And that's what a good leader does. And thank you for your leadership. She's got her heart in the right place. That's the most important place to be, is thinking about people all the time, using her own experience to help others. And that's what unites all of us tonight. We're all in it together. We're one big family. In my dad's Mass card when he passed away, he quoted the section of the Bible, only section that he could identify that talks about salvation, Matthew 25. Those that were there for the least one of these, my brothers and sisters, was there for me. You don't have to be there for everybody. Just be there for one person. And in your admonition on the mitzvah, you change one thing, you've changed the world. You help one person, you've changed the world. And that's the kind of spirit, and that's the kind of attitude that unites everybody in this room, because you face down intolerance, you face down stigma, you face down everybody who puts you down, but you're not giving up because you got something burning inside. And that is what's going to make the world a better place. It's ultimately compassion and it's love. We can talk all about facts and figures. We can make the strongest, most powerful arguments about the economy and worker productivity and health care and trying to do better in our country, but nothing moves people more than the human spirit and the heart of a person who's moved by compassion and love. It's not about health care, it's not about affordable housing, it's not about supportive living, it's not about research. It's about taking care of the people we love. That's it in a nutshell. You know, my uncle was the first president of the United States to address the moral issue of his time, civil rights, as president. And he said, who amongst us in this country would be content with the counsels of patience and delay if they were to change the color of their skin for that of their fellow American? How often would they feel it's all right for us to wait for that thing called civil rights? As people often did back in the day, they said, wait, now is not the time. Who amongst us would be willing to trade places with someone else and walk in their shoes and be content with the counsels of patience and delay? If it's your family member who's being discriminated against, who's being marginalized because of their color of skin, or something just as immutable as the color of their skin, just as immutable as the gender that they have, is the genetic predisposition that puts them at risk for a neurological disorder. And yet, we heap insult to injury by marginalizing the people in this country suffering from a physical illness and saying, you're on the outs in society, you're shut out, we're going to isolate you, we're going to marginalize you, we're going to discriminate against you, you're less than. You're less entitled to the same health care that any one of us would expect if we had cancer or diabetes or asthma. Just because the organ in your body is the brain. We know better. I mean, we should know better. But the fact of the matter is, stigma is something very powerful. Prejudice and bigotry, discrimination is something powerful. Do you realize that it wasn't 50 years ago that we passed the mental health parity bill that said the brain was part of the body? That it should be treated like every other organ in your body? It was 2 years ago. 2 years ago. 2008, when the United States of America, world leader, home of the NIH, enlightened country, sent a man to the moon, leads the world, we finally kind of got around to the fact that the brain actually is part of the body. And it's so funny that it makes you cry. Because it's the attitudes that have been keeping us back. And sometime in years to come, people will look back and wonder, just like they did with the civil rights fight, why did it take them so long? But everyone in this room can feel proud that you are the freedom riders of our generation. You are on the forefront of the greatest new movement in the civil rights movement to try to include everybody in the great American family at the table of brotherhood and sisterhood. You are out there making sure that no one really gets left behind. So they say that I go around to all these speeches and I go around to events all the time. Honestly, since I've been out of office, I haven't had an opportunity like this where I've had this many people pay attention to a thing I've said in 9 months. This is welcome to me tonight. Are you kidding me? As a politician, are you kidding me? I've been going through withdrawal ever since I left Congress. Nobody's returning my phone calls. Nobody listens to me anymore, cares about what I have to say. It's very daunting. But funny thing happened. About 2 years ago, I was sitting on the John F. Kennedy Foundation board, and they said we have an exciting year next year. We're going to be celebrating President Kennedy's new frontier. It's going to be the 50th anniversary of John F. Kennedy's being elected and sworn in as president. And the inauguration of the new frontier. And I don't know why he kept saying frontier. Although I do know that's what is the emblem of President Kennedy's time in office. And it was so interesting because the day before, I had one of Dr. Wang's colleagues talk to me about how the brain was considered the last medical frontier. So like, a good politician, I light goes off, and I go, my God, you know, frontier, frontier. Maybe I can get my cousin Caroline to organize a bunch of neuroscientists on the 50th anniversary of the new frontier. And we can say that, you know, if President Kennedy were here today, and he would care about the new frontier, just as he did back in '60, and then he would say neuroscience is the new frontier for today. So I called Caroline up. She said, Patrick, great idea. I love your enthusiasm, but we've already got the president lined up. We've got the White House, we've got the Capitol, and all the leadership. We're going to do a big event. I said, oh. She said, but you know, come to think of it, we don't have anything lined up for the anniversary of the moonshot speech. If you want to use the John F. Kennedy Library and invite your friends, you know, go ahead and use it. So all of a sudden I sent out an invitation, you know, to all the top neuroscientists that I've been told are the leaders in thinking about how to discover the brain. You know, and I sent an invitation to the head of the NIH, Francis Collins, and head of NIMH, Tom Insel, and Nora Volkoff from NIDA, and, you know, Story Landis from NINDS. I sent invitations to all over the place, and funny thing happened, everybody wanted to come. So we had a big group at the John F. Kennedy Library. And I said to everybody in the room, you know, I look out in this room and I see a sea of astronauts. Of course, we're out there at the anniversary of when President Kennedy said, you know, we're going to put a man on the moon and return him safely before the decade was out. That's what he said. Well, back in '61, people thought he was a little off his rocker to think that we could get it done in less than a decade. They had no doubt that America would eventually get to the moon and back, but the notion that we do it so quickly, when at the time we really didn't have the tools to do it, was something that even Dan Golden, who later became NASA administrator, said to me was pretty far-fetched. But we did it before the decade was out. And the thing that I constantly hear from people when it comes to issues of finding cures and better treatments for the brain is I keep hearing people say this is too hard, it's too difficult, it's too complex. This is from the country that managed 50 years ago, not 10, 20 years ago, 50 years ago to put a man on the moon and return him safely. If we can put a man on the moon and return him safely 50 years ago, in our decade we can put the moonshot to the mind as our single challenge and make sure we come out